I want to say Batman v Superman is better than Man of Steel only because it feels like pretty much everyone involved was trying considerably less hard. Man of Steel upsets me because it felt misleading. They were promising something big and mythic and inspiring and hopeful. Instead, we got something angry, dour, and hopeless. At least with the sequel, the marketing isn't trying to hide any of that, so I don't feel like I'm being lied to. But Batman v Superman carries all of Man of Steel's flaws while inexplicably losing all of the predecessor's good qualities. For the completely plot-free version of my review, Batman v Superman is terrible. The closest thing I would compare it to is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. It doesn't have a plot, but rather a pile of moments and events hastily strung together to help set up all the necessary chess pieces for the Justice League, while simultaneously giving the illusion of having something important to say. The handful of times a character is actually given something to do, it doesn't make much sense by the logic of comic book icons or even human beings, but the logic of a studio who want to establish and set up the next 10 years of films. Superman is given next to nothing to do save for retreading the same arc from the last film. Batman gets more screen time, but his motivations and plans are vague at best and make no goddamn sense at worst. Ben Affleck gives a powerful presence and a shocking amount of charisma, but the script goes out of its way to make him completely unempathizable. And if you were excited to see Wonder Woman on the big screen for the first time, please don't bother seeing this. Gal Gadot gives it her all, but her subplot is meaningless, and the way they treat the character makes me wonder if it would have been less sexist to just not bother having her. Lex Luthor is cringe-inducing, Lois Lane is only in the film to create problems, and honestly no one else in the plot really matters that much. Say what you want about Man of Steel, but there's no denying that it was a visual marvel, and the action scenes were a high watermark for the entire genre. But Zack Snyder couldn't be bothered to make anything visually interesting in this film unless it's a shot reminding us that Superman is kind of like Jesus, or retelling the destruction from the last film. And the action nosedives in not only quality, but quantity. You can count the number of action scenes with Batman and Superman on a hand. And the big title draw, the epic battle between Batman and Superman, the two titans of the industry, is an unmitigated failure. It's short, emotionally non-investing, and has the excitement of a slowly burning piece of paper. The spark for the fight is nonsensical, making both sides out to be immature dicks, and I won't spoil the resolution here, but it honestly feels like a parody of the grim, dark Batman. I wouldn't have been shocked to see the Lego Batman walk in at some point. And the Doomsday fight's not much better. It has a little more energy, but Doomsday as a character is a meaningless blob explained away with incoherent sci-fi gobbledygook that almost makes the Codex seem comprehensible. But what really dooms this film is just how damn hollow the whole thing is. It's almost 2.5 hours of nothing. The only characters who evolve or change are the ones we haven't met up until now. It has nothing to say other than retreading concepts from the previous film. The debate between the two heroes feels moot because both sides are hypocritical assholes who can't justify their own side, and the darkness, violence, and gloom is cranked up to the point where you just feel numb to it. Batman v Superman is a phenomenal failure that should be avoided like the plague, but if you're going to see it no matter what and don't want to know anything about the plot, you can tune out now. If you're going to see it no matter what, but you want to know what you're getting into, I'll try to make some sense of it. So the plot starts when Lois Lane gets herself caught by terrorists in Africa, prompting Superman to intervene. This kickstarts a conversation as to whether or not Superman should be allowed to act freely. At least that's the beginning, because you more or less figure out way before any of the other characters in the film that this is one of many incidents orchestrated by Lex Luthor, who is trying to put pressure on a Superman monitoring Senate council to let him have access to Kryptonian technology to make anti-Superman measures. You may be wondering why this conversation is only just starting if this council has been around for a while, and already you're putting way more thought into this than David Goyer did. But despite kickstarting all of this, Superman only comes back into the picture when it's to push the plot forward a little bit. For the most part, he just stands on the fringes and wonders what his place on Earth is. We did this in the last film, Clark. You chose Earth and you put the cape on. That ship has long sailed, buddy. The majority of the film is actually dedicated to Batfleck, who's conspiring to steal a crate of kryptonite from Lex Luthor to combat Superman. His rationale? Because Superman destroyed a Wayne Tech building in Metropolis, and he could possibly turn evil, even though Batman's only evidence for this are really highly detailed dreams. Now see, this could work if Batman was ever asked to defend himself, because it's not a completely indefensible point, but Batman just feels hypocritical because the film doesn't shy away from the fact that he kicks down the doors of impoverished neighborhoods, tortures and brands people, and even kills without remorse. Oh, and I'm not kidding, this Batman kills a lot of people. He shoots, stabs, breaks a dude's neck in front of us, and blows people up with little hesitance. If you thought the creative team might have learned a lesson from the outrage over Superman killing Zod, David Goyer seems to have taken it as a challenge instead. And at least there was something interesting to talk about with the idea of Superman using lethal force. This is just off-putting. Oh, and you know how in the nightmare sequence Batman is chained up with two other people? Oh, you just wait and see what Superman does to those guys. It also really highlights the stereotype of Batman as a rich man buying victory, because he seems to have bulletproof material to the point that he can get shot point blank in the back of the head and only seem to be slightly perturbed by it. The whole fight of God versus man feels really hollow when it doesn't seem like Batman ever struggles. The whole kryptonite plot just doesn't make any sense. Him and Lex both want Superman dead, so why don't they just collaborate? Lex even suggests it at one point. Sure, Bruce knows Lex is an illegal smuggler, but given that this Batman is the kind of guy who will shoot and blow up an entire dock of workers who are merely paid to transport a rock, it's hard to imagine he can get the high ground on this one. Oh yeah, and you really want to know why Lex hates Superman? Because his dad beat him and praying didn't help, so any god figure is inherently wrong. I really wish I were joking on that one. If it feels like I'm being a little harsh on Batman, it's because Ben Affleck is one of the genuinely good things about this film. He has an awesome charm and intensity as Bruce Wayne, despite the script giving him nothing to work with. That action scene of him going Arkham City on everyone is as awesome as the trailer makes it out to be, and Zack Snyder has figured out how to find this really good balance that makes the Bat believably terrifying and almost supernatural. Put this Batman in The Dark Knight and you would have had an even better film. And if you think collecting a rock seems like too small a concept to hold a film together, then you understand cinematic storytelling better than anyone working on this project. This gets dragged mercilessly throughout the majority of the film, used as an excuse to introduce the various parties to each other, and also give a reason for Diana Prince to show up. Yes, let's get to Wonder Woman. As it turns out, she's trying to steal from Lex too. Apparently, he has an incriminating photo of her outing her as a metahuman, just a small part of a larger database he has been collecting on superpowered individuals. Yes, the queen of comic book superheroines, and her subplot, are an elaborate Easter egg for the Justice League. Oh yeah, and they use her for product placement too, because right when Doomsday's about to hit, Diana decides to use a Turkish airline to flee the scene, just before changing her mind. She is running away from a fight. We waited 75 years for that, folks. Hope it was worth it. It's a real shame too, because much like Batfleck, it's clear Gal gets Wonder Woman much more than any of the writers or directors do. She seems to understand what Diana is, a symbol of empathy, compassion, and love. But all the creative team can think to do with her is make her Gladiator Warrior Princess number 24601. And while we're on the subject of female characters, Lois Lane in this film is used exclusively to create problems for Superman, and Ma Kent just straight up suggests that he should quit on being a superhero. I'm not asking every female character be a paragon of progressiveness, but, if you can't think of anything worthwhile for your female characters to do, just don't bother having them in the movie. As it turns out, the title Dawn of Justice is much more fitting than Batman v Superman, because everything about that fight sucks. As it turns out, the title Dawn of Justice is much more fitting than Batman v Superman, because everything about the fight sucks. The obnoxiously long wait to the fight could have been a potentially interesting character study, breaking down both heroes' interpretations of heroism and their conflicting worldviews. But A, that doesn't seem to happen, and B, it doesn't seem like they have too much to disagree on, actually. Clark takes offense to Batman's torturing targeting the lower class, but we're not given enough of him helping the common man to make him superior. But at the same time, we're given just enough to know Batman is overreacting. The only action we see from Superman for the majority of the film is a long montage of him saving people from disasters. That thing he should always be doing. It's not enough to overcome the fact that he let Metropolis burn to the ground and threatens to kill Batman at one point, but it's also enough to make Bruce seem really irrational. And even though he wants to kill Superman throughout the whole film, he doesn't finally step up and do it until one of the most inexplicable parts of the entire film. During a hearing regarding Superman, a former employee of Wayne's causes an incident that Superman doesn't even try and stop. So Bruce blames Superman for his employee that he wasn't monitoring going rogue. He's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, right? The fight itself sucks. Superman finally agrees to fight because Lex is manipulating him, and while he tries to explain this, Batman just covers his ears like a 10-year-old. So we get maybe 4 minutes of a fight that's too slow yet too short, and lacks any of the splash page pop you were hoping for here. Realized they had nothing interesting to do with it. Then Doomsday shows up. How Zod becomes a crystal monster makes no sense. The CGI in this fight is really bad too. If you're making this the climax of your film, then it better be ready for prime time. It's marginally better than the fight preceding it, only because Snyder seems to remember his skill set and uses some of his signature camera moves. But it also serves as a culmination of everything wrong with the film. No stakes, failed emotional beats, characters acting stupid to set up future films, and an empty and bloated, poor spectacle. So who's to blame for all this? My first instinct is David Goyer because it's very clear he's just not cut out for comic book movies. Any success he's had in the past was either a fluke or the result of better people letting him get credit. Because now his work is nothing but empty, hollow, angry, and cynical. He genuinely learned no lessons from Man of Steel, and he still doesn't seem to understand the kind of films he makes. I shudder to think about how bad this film would have been before Chris Terrio came on. But as much as I tried to defend this guy, it's very clear that Zack Snyder's just not right for this material. He seemingly can't wrap his head around Superman, or maybe just doesn't want to because he doesn't like the character. I thought I would be angrier, but honestly, I'm just kind of numb. I compared this film to Amazing Spider-Man earlier, and my emotional state was just the same. What little I can recommend is drowned out by the sheer empty bloat of the rest of the film. As much as I didn't like Man of Steel, at least it had something to get passionate and upset about, a soul. But this is just a terrible holding pattern for another wave of dark, dour films. And it stings even more because I know this cast could make a great Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman movie. I want to see these people succeed. I want them to bring my favorite characters to life. But something is holding them back, and whatever it is, I really hope to God it's gone. And I know a lot of fans will want to defend this movie no matter what, and I can genuinely empathize. I want there to be great DC films too. I want these legends to be legends. But we have to expect more than this. Warner Brothers is letting our heroes down, and we can't stand for it, because they were always there for us.